The Durston Gear X-Mid Pro 2 Dyneema single wall ultralight tent. This is a review that's been a long time in the making. I got a lot of notes, a lot of things to share with you guys, so let's get into it. I'm not usually somebody that's jumping on the bandwagon and getting into the hype of things. And in fact, I ordered a X-Mid 1 V2 when they were first released and available for order. It shipped to my house, I set it up in my yard, and to be honest, I was not super excited about the space of the one-person version, and I actually ended up selling it before I ever used that tent. And then I got my hands on the X-Mid Pro 2 and that changed everything. I'm not even kidding when I say that this has been such a fun and enjoyable shelter for me to use for my backpacking. So let's talk about the specs, features, pros, cons, all that stuff, and get into it. Now, as far as specs are concerned for the Pro 2, this is a single wall tent. This is also made from a 0.55 ounce Dyneema composite fabric, and the dimensions are, it's 100 by 80 for the footprint size, and then you are 90 by 48 inches on the floor. Now, the cool thing about the floor is you sleep on a diagonal. So you have a rectangular floor, but it is shifted at a diagonal to create an amazing amount of living space inside of this tent. You have number 3 YKK watertight zippers on the outside, and then standard number 3 zippers on the mesh door on the inside. And you've got 2 doors and 2 vestibules on this tent. This has a minimum stake requirement of 4 stakes, which is crazy to think about. The rectangular shape makes it so that it's super easy to pitch, and adding 2 additional stakes at the doors just makes it so it's easier to unzip and zip closed those door zippers, because those watertight zippers are a little stiff, but the simplicity aspect of this tent is truly amazing. You've got a peak at each door end that allows for really great ventilation inside of the tent, and the peak height at 46 inches, again, makes for a lot of space inside of the tent, especially for one person. Now, because the tent is single wall and made from Dyneema composite fabric, it is super lightweight. This version is pre-2023, so it comes in at about 20 ounces of weight without the trekking poles. You're gonna add trekking pole weight to that if you are not carrying them in your hands. And then on the floor, you've got a 15 denier woven floor. This is not a Dyneema floor, which is actually something that I appreciate seeing because it allows for a bit more durability. But in addition to that, it keeps the pack size a bit smaller for the tent as well. But also what I really like about the floor is this is truly a tensioned floor. And so into the corners, you have little tiny struts that keep the bathtub floor nice and tall, but it makes it so that you can pull the floor tight and keep it tight so that you're not sliding around on it and you don't have those weird aspects of a floating floor that you see from some other Dyneema shelters out on the market. So what would I change to the X-Mid from my experience so far? The first thing that I would change is I would add a little bit of height to the bathtub floor. I do a lot of backpacking in the desert, and it doesn't matter where I go, I've got deep sand that often becomes an issue with coming into the tent, and so a little bit more height on the bathtub floor would be nice there. But even more important, I would like to see, if possible, without adding a bunch of weight, a solid panel of fabric that you see sometimes from other companies, so you don't have mesh coming all the way down to the top of the bathtub floor. And what that solid piece of fabric would do is it would be breathable fabric, so you're still getting some of the benefits of the mesh, but more specifically, when you've got blowing wind coming up and spin drifting through the vestibule in the tent, doesn't matter what tent it is. Every time I'm in the desert, I end up with that blowing sand. And when I've got a wall that is this low to the ground, that sand just blows straight into the tent. And a little bit of a solid panel would actually help mitigate the amount of sand that comes into the tent because it can't come through that breathable fabric, but it just like makes its way through this no-see-um mesh, no problem. And so that's one thing that I would change, but that's pretty specific to my particular needs. The other thing that I know people would love to see on this tent are some loops at the peak of each side. So at each pole for you to be able to hang things from. There's nothing inside of this tent to be able to hang a lantern, a headlamp, or there's no pockets like up in the top area for you to put things. And so being able to have a piece of cordage or something to be able to hang stuff from would be really nice without having to purchase an additional accessory from another company to accomplish that. The other thing that has been fixed and applied to the 2023 version of the X-Mid is mesh pockets inside of the tent. I thought initially that that was going to be a huge deal for me. Turns out really not that big of a deal, and I'm not too concerned about the fact that this tent doesn't have mesh pockets. The last thing that I would change on the tent that I've already modified myself is having longer stakeout cordage. Oftentimes, again, I'm camping in the desert and you can see I've got to have a rock on top of my stake for that stake to be able to hold the tension to keep the tent nice and tight for the pitch that it requires. And the factory length cordage that came with the tent simply just not long enough to dig deadman anchors or to be able to put a rock on top of and still adjust the length and tautness of that cordage to be able to get the best pitch possible for the tent. The other thing I've added is down at the zipper side, because you've got different heights of pitching. Depending on that, the elastic shock cord that is attached on a loop to the door is just not long enough for a lot of the situations that I found myself in. So I'm just using a longer piece of cord with a taut line hitch for me to adjust the tension of that and extend the length to my stake so I can get the best pitch possible out of the tent. So as I was doing my research and putting my notes together for this review, I asked on the Durston Gearheads Facebook group what everybody else's experience has been with this tent and what they would change, what things they really like about it. And the information that I got in those responses were really great. And one of the key things that was shared is the vestibule size is really nice on this tent. And I agree. You've got a lot of space to be able to put a backpack and gear, and it stays out of the way of the doorway entrance, which is super nice. Also, in that same vein is the position of the pole for where the doorway is. It's completely out of the way of the door, which is super nice to see. I've got a Z-Pax Plex Solo, and that has a rainbow style door that just drops to the ground, which is its own issue in my opinion. But the pole for the structure of the tent is right smack dab in the middle of the doorway. So you have to go around that pole either side for you to get in and out. And on the X-Mid here, the door is a nice like L shape, which makes it so that when you unzip it, it doesn't drop to the ground and fall into the mud, the dirt, and sand and such, and then get inside of your tent. And then also make it so that that no-see-um mesh basically loses its longevity because it's getting abrasion and such from being in the dirt. The other really common question that I see about the floor size of this tent, because 25-inch wide pads are becoming way more popular, especially 25-inch wide rectangular pads. Do two 25-inch wide pads fit inside of the X-Mid Pro 2 with a 48-inch wide floor? And you can see I've got two pads in here that are regular wide rectangular pads, and it's a pretty tight fit. Honestly, not the ideal situation. And would it be nice to see 50 inches of width on this tent? Yes, I would think that that would be cool. However, I personally don't think that the vast majority of people are going to use this tent as a two-person shelter. You're going to want to carry something that has quite a bit more floor space for two people for you to be as comfortable as possible. So I don't think it always makes the most sense to squeeze two people into a 2-person tent like this and try to make that work. Now, will it work? Yeah, I think so. But you can see it's pretty tight and maybe not the best option unless you're using some tapered style pads that do reduce the overall footprint of the pad inside of the tent floor. So overall, everything that you get with the X-Mid Pro is just amazing. It's a really well designed with the twin offset pole design that creates amazing headroom, amazing living space on the inside of the tent, the lightweight aspect being at 20 ounces of weight or less, and just the overall attention to detail with this tent, vents, the zipper choice, the reinforcements in the corners, all the aspects to this tent that truly make it next level and something that is worth the investment in my opinion. The last thing I'll talk about before I wrap up is just the overall attention to detail with this tent. Part of what makes it achieve such a lightweight aspect is you have less seams because of the twin pole design that reduces the amount of panels necessary to create the livable space inside of the tent. The fact that the seams are hot bonded, like welded together as opposed to stitched, and so you have less seam tape and things going on inside of the tent. Guy out points where you need them. Reinforcements in the places that you need them. Quality zipper choices and length of zipper and design aspects that do seriously make this a next level, top-notch, really high quality product for backpacking that I do really feel like is worth the investment. The X-Mid Pro 2 from Durston Gear, highly recommend it. A really great, super high quality product, and I appreciate Dan for allowing me to test and put this to use to be able to share with you guys in my experience with it. If you have questions about the X-Mid, let me know. But you can also always reach out to Dan. I know that he is super active in making sure that his customers are taken care of. And that is a big, big part of why I enjoy this product so much. Dan cares about his customers and takes care of them. So appreciate you guys watching today. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Hope you have an awesome day. Catch you on the next one. See you later.